if my daughter did what she could do and prepared the way that she could prepare, and the teacher still, yelled at the class or yelled at her, to understand that she had validation with herself. And if she needed it, she had a support system at home that I had her back. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. And I have an interesting question here from a mother whose 9-year-old son had an issue in class with a teacher. And having been a teacher for 17 years in the classroom, then I thought that I would share a little bit of my insight and give some tips in case your children are feeling disempowered or feeling picked on or feeling told off by their teacher, and you don't know what to do. Let's get into it. So my son's teacher told him off for getting an answer wrong and made him miss out on his break time. That's a shame. I missed that the first time. Miss out on his break time for getting an answer wrong. That's unfortunate. Also, I want to note this. It seems like this is a British person, right? Because in British English, I spent years as an English teacher, right? So there's American English and British English, and a lot of my audience is in the United States. And to tell somebody off means something a lot stronger in the US, right? It's like, you mother, things like kind of like road rage, you know what I mean? Whereas in British English, as far as I understand, it's just kind of like scolding them a little bit or something like that. It's a little less light than it is in the United States. So it's a lot harsher. So he's only 9 years old. I'm just not feeling happy about this and quite annoyed over it. They seem to be putting time pressures on the kids to answer questions, but not every child can work in this way. And my son gets easily mixed up with his math. And here's another British English. They put an S on the math. So is it understandable that I'm annoyed over this? First, let me answer your last question first. Absolutely. It's absolutely understandable and reasonable that you're upset over this and annoyed over this because it's an annoying situation. Okay, that's first. If you want to stop the video now, it is absolutely okay and you're valid in feeling this way. Now, let's talk about some healthy ways and some empowering ways for both us as parents, and that we can teach our kids to handle these situations in a healthy and empowering way so that they can handle rejection, missing out on break time, which is really unfortunate. So we can handle all of these different things. Okay, so first of all, there are all sorts of teachers, and he's only 9, so I'm guessing he's 3rd or 4th grade. I mean, he has 7 or 8 more years of schooling. He's going to come into contact with all sorts of teachers, from lazy teachers, angry teachers, happy teachers, wonderful teachers, all sorts of teachers with no creative ability, super creative teachers that don't want to be there. He's going to come into contact with all sorts of teachers. And I'm going to share a story. I had a similar situation with my daughter last year. But it's really important to me that we lay a foundation now to be able to have mentally strong, emotionally strong children, regardless of their teacher. Because we can't necessarily control their teacher's decisions, and we don't want to become the parents that go to them and complain about all of these things, because ultimately that will impact how the teacher responds and reacts to our kids. So the first thing I would do, and I have done, is to address my own child in validating them regardless of the result that happens, validating them regardless of what their teacher says or the friends say or anyone at school says, to be validated within themselves because they have a strong support system at home. That's the first thing, right? Because we can't control what their teachers do. teachers come in all different packages, like we said before. And I'll tell you from experience, the teachers' rooms are, I'll just say it, some of the most toxic places with teachers complaining. They're underpaid. They had to go through rigorous education. Maybe they've gone through their education, they started getting their job, but they realize they don't like teaching, but they feel stuck there and they feel like they can't get out. So then they're in this miserable job like most people, except for the difference is from an accountant who followed that path and they're in a job that they feel stuck in. And a teacher is the accountant, they're dealing with numbers. A teacher, they're dealing with little small human beings. And that's the difference. And it's a real shame, but that's the reality for it. So when my daughter was in second grade, she was 7, and it was last year. And she had a teacher that it's a kind of teacher that is always, angry. You could see it on her face, just the lips compressed all the time, the fire in her eyes. You could tell she didn't enjoy her job. She had a stressful life. And when we have stressful lives, when we feel stress, we take that stress out on other people. And if this teacher is feeling stress, it's going to come out in their job. Okay, that's why it's important to lay a strong foundation for our children at home. So she was worried about, my daughter I'm talking about, was worried about going in and answering questions wrong or getting a bad test grade, and then her teacher yells at her, and she's worried about that. And it was very important to me that she finds validation in herself, and she finds validation in her process of preparing, and the results will take care of themselves. And if the teacher didn't like the results, then that's okay. If my daughter did what she could do and prepared the way that she could prepare, and the teacher still, yelled at the class or yelled at her, to understand that she had validation with herself. And if she needed it, she had a support system at home that I had her back. And one cute story, when we were walking to school one day, and this was a day when she had an exam or something, and we were walking to school. And let's say her teacher's name was Miss Christina. And I said, I'm really proud of you for preparing and studying and doing this homework. What are you going to do if Miss Christina yells at you today? And we were walking to school and she said, be me. And that was the best answer in the world. What are you going to do? Be me. That's exactly what you're going to do. You're going to be you and be happy and be strong with that, right? So all that being said, have your support system at home, but even more than showing them that you're supporting them, help them find validation in themselves. I have tools to help you do that. Those are below if you're interested. Now, let's talk about some things to not do, some things that I would recommend not doing because it would actually create weakness or create disempowering situations for our kids. So we don't, as I alluded to earlier, we don't want to be the helicopter parent or the super overly protective parent. And we definitely don't want to get into a blame game, blaming the teacher with our kids and get them in the habit of criticizing and blaming others for what happens. There's a fine line there because we want to support them and we want to let them know that with the teacher, that the fact that they got in trouble or the fact that they got told off and the fact that they missed the break time, that was not fair. That was not fair of the teacher to do. And the teacher was upset because of something that was going on in their lives. But at the same time, we want to accept responsibility for ourselves and we want to give validation to our children regardless of their circumstances, regardless of missing break time, regardless of this unfair result. And for me, I found the best way to find that balance for us is to address the consequences, the situation, rather than addressing the teacher themselves. Rather than addressing the person themselves, we want to address the situation. So in this sort of situation where they missed out on break time, I might say something like, you know, that is not fair. And I'm sorry that you had to do that. That was not fair. And I want you to know that you didn't do anything wrong. And I am proud of you. And I want you to be proud of you for answering the question, even if it was wrong, because you answered the question, right? Something like that. We want to find the win inside the bigger loss. We want to find a win because there's a win in all of these situations, and a loss can always be turned into a win with our next decision, right? We don't want to compound losses. We want to take losses, take the lessons, and grow from those experiences. And we don't want to be critical of the teacher with our child or even with ourselves, because being critical of people is a disempowering action. It's a disempowering behavior. And we don't want to pass disempowering behaviors onto our children. We don't want to pass behaviors of being critical of people, but of understanding situations, understanding sometimes things are not fair, and understanding, most importantly, they have a support system at home and they should be proud of themselves for their wins. And then I would take them out for ice cream to celebrate that. We can't always control what kinds of teachers our kids have, but we can do our best to control how they respond to these teachers. Does that make sense? So thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending time with me. If you have a parenting question or situation that you would like me to do one of these coaching videos on, then below you can find some resources, Conscious Parent Leaders Facebook group, or send me an email and ask your question or situation, and I will be happy to address it and help empower parents, because empowered parents raise empowered kids. I'll see you in the next one.